canopy, towering trees stretched towards the heavens, their leaves rustling in the soft wind. Below, in the shadows of the thick undergrowth, the jungle floor teemed with creatures that made the forest feel like a hidden, ancient world. Among the many animals that called the Amazon home, a small but courageous capuchin monkey named Tico swung effortlessly between the branches. His fur was sleek and brown, blending well with the bark of the towering trees. Tico had lived his entire life in the high reaches of the canopy, rarely venturing down to the jungle floor. He loved the freedom of swimming through the air, the wind rushing past him as he darted from tree to tree. But this morning was different. As he reached a high branch and settled to rest, he noticed a strange silence in the air. Usually, the jungle echoed with the sounds of birds, insects, and howling monkeys. But today, the silence was eerie, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. Tico cocked his head and listened carefully. Far off, in the direction of the river, he heard a faint roar. He had heard that sound before, a jaguar. Not just any jaguar, but Yara, the most feared predator in the entire jungle. She ruled over a large territory, and her presence meant that something important was happening. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to investigate. Tico scampered down from the treetops to the low levels, careful to avoid the areas where Yara might be lurking. He waved through vines and large leaves until he reached a small clearing near the river. Here, a group of animals had gathered. There was Peko, the giant anteater with his long, sharp claws, Leela, the green anaconda, who slithered silently along the ground, and Benny, a scarlet macaw, perched high above on a branch, his bright red feathers standing out against the green backdrop of the forest. They were gathered around a creature Tico had never seen before, a strange, tall figure standing on two legs, covered in fur with a long snout and curious eyes. It was a tapir, an animal that rarely ventured into these parts of the jungle. "What's going on?" Tico whispered to Benny, who fluttered his wings nervously. "The floodwaters are rising," Benny squawked, his voice tense. "The river is swelling, and the tapirs are leaving their homes. Something is very wrong." Tico's eyes widened. The Amazon River often flooded during the rainy season, but the way Benny and the other animals spoke, thus sounded much worse. "The rains are heavier this year," said Peko, his deep voice rumbling through the air. "If we don't prepare, the flood will sweep through the lower parts of the jungle. Many of us won't survive." As the animals debated their next move, a loud rustling came from the bushes. Yara, the jaguar, emerged from the shadows, her golden eyes scanning the group. Instantly, everyone froze. Yara was not known for her patience or kindness, and any animal in her path could easily become her next meal. But instead of attacking, Yara simply sat down, her sleek, spotted body tense but calm. "We've seen the waters," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "The river is angry, and it will rise soon. If we don't act, many will perish." The animals exchanged nervous glances. It was rare for Yara to speak to anyone, let alone issue a warning. Tico's mind raced. The river was many miles away, but if Yara had seen it with her own eyes, then the danger was real. "We must gather supplies," Leela hissed, her long body coiling around a tree trunk. "Food, shelter, we need to protect ourselves." "We can't just run," Tico interjected, his small voice growing louder. "We need to find higher ground. The jungle floor will be underwater. What about the young ones, the nests, and burrows?" There was a moment of silence as the animals considered this. Yara's eyes flipped toward the river, as though she could already see the devastation coming their way. "I know a place," said Yara finally, standing up. "There's a hidden hill deep in the jungle. The ground there is high enough to avoid the floods, but it's far. We must move quickly if we are to make it before the water rises." With no other options, the animals agreed to follow Yara to this hidden hill. One by one, they began to prepare. Benny flew off to warn other birds in the canopy, while Peko used his sharp claws to dig for food. Leela disappeared into the undergrowth, hunting for small animals and carrying them back to the group. Tico, still uncertain of the danger, went off in search of his family. Swinging through the trees, he soon found his mother and the rest of the capuchins. They were huddled together in their usual spot, but even they could sense that something was wrong. He explained the situation, and reluctantly, they agreed to follow. The journey to the hidden hill was long and treacherous. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the sky darkened with storm clouds, and the wind began to howl through the trees. Every few minutes, they would hear a distant roar as the river surged higher, creeping closer and closer to their location. They had no time to lose. As they trekked through the jungle, the animals worked together in ways they never had before. Peko, with his massive claws, cleared fallen branches, while Tico and his family scouted ahead, alerting the group to any dangers. Leela slithered silently at the rear, making sure no stragglers were left behind. But the most surprising of all was Yara. Normally solitary, she now led the group with fierce determination, her keen senses guiding them through the maze of trees and vines. Whenever they encountered danger, whether it was a fallen tree or a pit of quicksand, Yara found a way through. Finally, after hours of travel, they reached the base of the hill. It was steep and covered in dense vegetation, but as they climbed, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of the raging river faded into the distance. At the top, they found a clearing where the ground was firm and dry. The hill was high enough to avoid the floodwaters, and the trees provided shelter from the storm. Exhausted but relieved, the animals collapsed in the clearing. They had made it, at least for now. As they settled in for the night, Tico found himself next to Yara, who was perched on a large rock, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. "Thank you," Tico said quietly, feeling a bit nervous around the fearsome predator. "You saved us." Yara didn't respond immediately. She kept her gaze fixed on the distant jungle, where the rising river was still a threat. "I didn't do it for ya," she said eventually, her voice low. "I did it for myself. If the jungle falls, I fall with it." Tico nodded, understanding that even the most fearsome creatures were vulnerable in the face of nature's power. As the storm raged on in the distance, the animals huddled together on the hill, united by the knowledge that they had survived another day in the wild, unpredictable world of the Amazon. And as the rain fell, the jungle whispered its secrets, reminding them all that survival in the Amazon was not just about strength, but about working together, no matter how different they were. This story captures the spirit of survival, cooperation, and resilience that is essential in the Amazon jungle, where even the fiercest animals must sometimes rely on one another to survive.